"Get this woman off my plane, right now." The captain's voice cracked through the cabin speakers, sharp and impatient. For a second, everything went quiet. Then came the laughter. It started with a snort from row 2, then a few chuckles, then someone clapping like it was a live show. Phones rose into the air. People love moments like that. Public humiliation feels safe when it's not yours. The woman standing in the aisle didn't move. She wore a soft gray sweater that had clearly seen years of wear. The sleeves were slightly stretched. Her sneakers were clean but faded. A canvas backpack hung from one shoulder, the fabric patched carefully in 2 places. She didn't look angry. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked steady. The head flight attendant, Tanya Reed, stepped forward in her perfectly pressed uniform. Her smile was thin and sharp. "Ma'am," she said loudly enough for half the cabin to hear, "first-class passengers expect a certain standard." The woman met her eyes calmly. "I have a ticket," she replied. A man in a navy suit leaned across the aisle. His Rolex caught the cabin lights. "Yeah," he said with a smirk, "maybe it's for cleaning the seats." More laughter. Tanya held out her hand. "Let me see it." The woman handed over the boarding pass. Tanya barely glanced at it before tearing it straight down the middle. The sound was loud. Deliberate. A few passengers clapped again. "Your place is in the terminal," Tanya said, "not up here." The captain had stepped out of the cockpit now. Elliot Crane, confident, handsome in the way men are when they've never been told no. He didn't even ask a question. "This isn't a shelter," he said flatly. "Escort her off." Phones were recording from 3 different angles. The woman bent down, picked up her backpack, and slung it over her shoulder. She paused at the cabin door. Just for a moment. Then she turned her head slightly and looked back at Tanya. "Thank you," she said quietly. The laughter dimmed, confused. "For what?" Tanya asked. The woman's voice stayed soft. "I've seen enough." Then she walked down the stairs to the tarmac. The cold metal railing bit into her palm as she steadied herself at the bottom. Above her, someone leaned out a window and called down. "Better luck next time, sweetheart." The plane door shut. And just like that, it was over. Or so they thought. Inside the terminal, life moved on. Announcements echoed overhead. Children ran between rolling suitcases. Coffee machines hissed. The woman walked calmly to a small kiosk and ordered a coffee. The barista barely made eye contact. "That'll be $4.80, he muttered. She handed him a wrinkled bill. Behind her, 2 businessmen whispered. She must have wandered in from economy. Or from the street. She didn't turn around. She didn't react. She took her coffee and sat near the large glass windows overlooking the runway. A small plastic airplane skidded across the floor and bumped against her shoe. A little boy chased after it. She picked it up carefully and handed it back. "Thanks," the boy said brightly. His mother offered a tight smile. Then her eyes dropped to the worn sweater. Something in her expression shifted, polite distance. The woman nodded gently and looked back out at the planes. Her reflection in the glass was simple. Unremarkable. Invisible. Exactly how she preferred it. Her phone buzzed. "Claire, they're panicking. The video is everywhere. You okay?" She typed back. "I'm fine, let them panic." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and took a slow sip of coffee. Because this wasn't an accident. It was an evaluation. And Orion Air had just failed. 20 miles away, at Orion's headquarters, chaos had erupted. A massive screen in the boardroom replayed the video on loop. The torn ticket. The laughter. The escort down the stairs. 50 million views and climbing. Gavin Holt, interim CEO, paced the room. "This is a disaster," he barked. "Get it taken down." "We can't," the PR director replied nervously. "It's already everywhere." Elliot leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "She didn't belong there," he said. "You saw her." Tanya nodded stiffly. "I was protecting the brand." A young analyst at the end of the table cleared his throat. "Sir, Vale Aero Holdings did mention sending someone for a service audit." The room went quiet. Gavin scoffed. "A billionaire dressed like that?" No one answered. Because no one actually knew. Back in the terminal, the woman stood and walked outside toward the taxi line. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Long day?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "You could say that." The city blurred past as they drove. Her mind drifted backward. To a smaller airport years ago. Cracked vinyl seats. Her father arguing softly over repair costs. Her mother leaning down and brushing hair from her face. "You don't need to shout to be heard," her mother had told her. "Just stay steady." She had learned early that power doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks patient. The next morning, Orion's boardroom doors opened again. Executives stood to greet a major acquisition partner. They expected lawyers, consultants, a delegation. Instead, the woman from the plane walked in. This time she wore a tailored black suit. Her hair was pulled back cleanly. A simple silver badge rested at her collar. She placed the same canvas backpack on the floor beside her chair. Silence swallowed the room. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was calm. "I'm Lysandra Vale, chairwoman of Vale Aero Holdings." No one moved. Elliot's jaw tightened. Tanya's face drained of color. Gavin attempted a laugh that died halfway out. You were." "Yes," she said gently, "I was." She didn't sit. "I wanted to see how your staff treats people when they believe no one important is watching." The words were quiet, but they hit like a hammer. The boardroom stayed silent long after Lysandra finished speaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with bright morning light. Dallas shimmered outside. Inside, nobody blinked. Gavin cleared his throat first. "This is unexpected," he said carefully. "If this is about a misunderstanding." "It's not," Lysandra replied. She finally took her seat at the head of the table. No rush, no drama. Vale Aero Holdings purchased 48% of Orion Air over the past 18 months, she continued. Yesterday morning, we completed the remaining shares. A screen behind her lit up. Ownership transfer confirmed. Effective immediately. Elliot shifted in his chair. "You set us up." "No," she said. "You revealed yourselves." Tanya swallowed hard. "You could have just called ahead," she said quietly. Lysandra met her eyes. "If I had worn a tailored suit and arrived with security, how would you have treated me?" No one answered. Because they all knew. "I'm not here to destroy Orion," Lysandra said. "I'm here to rebuild it." She looked at the young analyst who had mentioned the audit. "What's your name?" "Daniel." "Daniel," she said, "why did you speak up yesterday?" He hesitated, "Because I thought it mattered." "It does," she replied. Then she turned to Elliot. "You will remain captain for now." Relief flickered across his face. "However," she added, "you will attend leadership retraining, starting with customer empathy." His relief vanished. "And Tanya," she continued gently, "you will help design it." Tanya blinked. "You're not firing me." Lysandra shook her head. "If I removed every person who made a mistake, we'd have no one left to grow." The room shifted. This wasn't revenge. It was reform. By afternoon, cameras lined up outside Orion headquarters. Bright Texas sun, clear blue sky, microphones everywhere. Lysandra stepped to the podium in her navy suit. The viral video played again on news screens behind her. A reporter shouted, "Why didn't you reveal who you were?" She answered simply, "Because respect should not depend on recognition." Another reporter asked, "Will there be consequences?" "Yes," she said, "but not the kind you expect." She announced a new initiative, the Cedar Standard. Every employee from executive to intern would spend 1 week per year serving in economy seating, assisting families, helping seniors, listening. Not as punishment, as perspective. Social media exploded again. But this time the tone shifted. Respect, curiosity, support. 2 days later, Lysandra flew to Cedar Hollow. Commercial, economy seat. No cameras. The plane landed at the small regional airport near her hometown. By evening, she sat in the same diner she'd grown up in. Red vinyl booths, warm daylight pouring through the windows. Mrs. Donnelly brought her pie without asking. "Heard you made the news," she said with a grin. Lysandra smiled. Small towns always hear first. A group of high school students at the next booth stared at her. One finally spoke up. "Is it true you own an airline?" She nodded. The girl leaned forward. "How?" Lysandra wiped her hands on a napkin. "I started by fixing what other people ignored." She told them about scholarships, about building an investment firm that focused on overlooked companies, about learning balance sheets the same way she once studied engine manuals. "You don't need to be loud to lead," she told them. "You need to be consistent." The students listened like it was the most important lecture of their lives. Maybe it was. Back in Dallas, the first Cedar Standard training began. Bright classrooms, whiteboards filled with notes. Elliot stood at the front, clearly uncomfortable. "Today," he began stiffly, "we're discussing service awareness." Lysandra sat in the back row, in a gray sweater. He noticed. He paused. Then something shifted. He stepped down from the podium. "Let's try something different," he said. "Imagine your worst day. You're late, you're tired, and someone treats you like you don't belong." He looked at Lysandra. "I did that." The room stayed quiet. "But flying isn't about altitude," he continued. "It's about attitude." It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Lysandra nodded slightly. Growth had begun. Later that evening, Tanya knocked on Lysandra's office door. "Do you hate me?" Tanya asked quietly. "No," Lysandra said. Tanya looked confused. "Why not?" "Because I used to think confidence looked like control," Lysandra replied. "I was wrong too." Tanya sat down slowly. "My parents worked 3 jobs," she admitted. "I promised myself I'd never look small again." Lysandra softened. Looking powerful and being powerful are different things. Tanya's eyes welled slightly. "I want to do better." "Then do," Lysandra said. "No drama. Just responsibility." 1 month later. Orion Flight 221 prepared for departure. Bright afternoon sun filled the cabin. Families boarded, elderly couples, college students. Tanya greeted each one personally. "Welcome aboard." Elliot's voice came over the intercom. "Today, we're proud to serve every passenger equally." No applause. No spectacle. Just warmth. Mid-flight, a man in worn clothes hesitated near first class. Tanya stepped forward. "Can I help you find your seat, sir?" Her voice carried something new. Respect. Lysandra watched quietly from row 18. No one recognized her. That was the point. As the plane cut cleanly through open blue sky, Lysandra looked out the window. She didn't think about revenge. She thought about Cedar Hollow, about her father's grease-stained hands, about the promise she made when she was 16. Build something better. And she had. But this was only the beginning. Because changing a company is one thing. Changing a culture takes time. And she was patient. Bright banners hung from the rafters. Orion Air Future Aviators program. The entire town showed up. Farmers in denim jackets, teachers in school polos, kids in hand-me-down sneakers clutching notebooks. Lysandra stood at center court under warm gym lights. No teleprompter, no security team. Just her. When I was your age, she began, the only runway I knew was a cracked strip behind a cornfield. A few kids laughed softly. I didn't have connections, I didn't have money, I had curiosity. She pointed toward a group of students seated near the bleachers. This scholarship isn't charity, it's investment. I expect you to build something better than I did. A boy in the front row raised his hand. What if people think we don't belong? She didn't hesitate. Belonging isn't given, it's built. Applause filled the gym. But what mattered more were the eyes watching her. Hope had waited in that room. 6 months later, bright sunlight poured over a regional airport hosting Orion's first nationwide student aviation competition. Booths lined the runway. Student-built drones, flight simulation stations, engine design displays. News crews moved between tents. Cedar Hollow High had a small folding table near the end. Their prototype wasn't flashy, it was efficient, clean, practical. A sleek design focused on fuel savings for rural airports. Judges stopped. One leaned down. Who designed the airflow model? A shy girl raised her hand. I did. Where'd you learn this? She glanced toward Lysandra, standing quietly in the background. From someone who told me to fix what others ignore. By sunset, Cedar Hollow won second place nationally. Not first, but second was historic. The town celebrated like they'd won the Super Bowl. Because progress mattered more than trophies. 3 months later, Orion faced its first real challenge under the new leadership. A severe summer storm system rolled across the Midwest. Flights delayed, connections missed, tensions rising. At Chicago O'Hare, a packed gate area buzzed with frustration. Families sat on luggage, business travelers paced. This was the moment culture would either hold or collapse. Tanya stood at the front desk. Instead of hiding behind policy, she stepped out into the crowd. We're going to take care of you, she announced clearly. Meal vouchers were distributed quickly. Hotel arrangements organized within minutes. Employees knelt to speak at eye level with frustrated passengers. Elliot volunteered to personally explain delays over the intercom. No corporate script. Just honesty. We'd rather land late than unsafe, he said calmly, and we'll stay until everyone here gets home. Phones recorded again. But this time, the videos showed compassion. Within hours, the hashtag changed. Orion Cares began trending. One elderly veteran traveling alone struggled to understand the delay instructions. He wore a faded jacket with old service patches. Most people walked past. Elliot didn't. He crouched beside him. Sir, let me walk you through this. The man looked up. You the pilot? Yes, sir. You got time for this? Elliot smiled. I do now. He personally escorted the man to the assistant's desk. Tanya watched from across the gate. She saw something she hadn't seen before. Not authority. Character. Later that night, she approached Elliot quietly. You've changed, she said. He nodded. I almost lost more than a job that day, he admitted. I almost lost who I wanted to be. Weeks later, an envelope arrived at Orion headquarters. Handwritten address. From Cedar Hollow Elementary School. Inside was a drawing. A crayon airplane in bright blue. Stick figures waving from the windows. At the bottom, messy handwriting. Dear Ms. Lilly, I want to fly someday. Thank you for letting kids like me dream. Lysandra stared at it for a long moment. Then she called Claire. Schedule something, she said. Another press event. No, Lysandra replied softly. A classroom visit. Bright morning sunlight filled the elementary classroom. Construction paper clouds hung from the ceiling. Lysandra sat cross-legged on the carpet. No suit. Just a soft sweater and jeans. A little girl with braids asked, Are you famous? Lysandra shook her head gently. I'm responsible. The kids didn't fully understand. But they listened. She held up a small model airplane. Planes don't fly because they're fancy. They fly because of balance. She balanced the model on her fingertip. Life works the same way. The teacher wiped her eyes quietly from the back of the room. Because this wasn't about airlines anymore. It was about belief. 1 year after the viral incident, Orion held its annual shareholder meeting. Bright ballroom, national coverage. Lysandra walked toward the stage. This time, applause rose naturally. Not forced. Earned. She spoke about profit growth. About improved customer ratings. About employee retention rising to record highs. Then she paused. I want to share something, she said. A video played on the screen. Footage from that first day. The torn boarding pass. The laughter. Then it transitioned to the high school scholarship ceremony. The aviation challenge. The storm response. The classroom visit. Silence filled the ballroom. That moment could have been about punishment, she said quietly. Instead, it became about purpose. Standing ovation. Not for power. For transformation. Later that week, Lysandra boarded an Orion flight quietly. First class. Same route. Different atmosphere. Tanya greeted her at the door. Welcome aboard, Miss Vale. Their eyes met. Mutual respect. A young flight attendant nearby asked Tanya quietly, Is she important? Tanya smiled softly. She makes us better. Lysandra took her seat. No one laughed. No one recorded. A businessman across the aisle offered a polite nod. The plane lifted smoothly into a wide blue sky. She looked around the cabin. Families, students, workers, veterans. No section felt superior. Just seats carrying people forward. A little boy from economy peeked toward first class. Curious. She stood, walked back, and switched seats with his mother so he could sit up front for takeoff. His face lit up like sunrise. That was leadership. Not position. Perspective. As the plane climbed above the clouds, sunlight flooded the cabin in golden tones. Lysandra looked out the window again. Not at what she had conquered, but at what she had built. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Passenger satisfaction just hit an all-time high. She smiled. Not because of the numbers, but because of what they represented. A culture shifted. A company redefined. A small-town girl who once watched jets from a cracked runway had proven something simple. You don't need to sit in first class to matter. You just need to carry first-class values wherever you go. And that is how you truly rise.